The American Revolutionary Era, presented by Ashley Lopez. During this specific time period, there were tensions in the mental and emotional state of the people, which led to one of the various reasons as to why they wanted to separate from the British Empire. There was increasing anti-British sentiment. The Boston Massacre, which occurred in 1770, led to many colonial citizens being killed by British soldiers. This caused the colonies to accuse Great Britain of unlawfully massacring their own citizens. Additionally, the Boston Tea Party also caused colonial men and women to form resistance due to the increasing tensions of taxation without representation. Because there were various events that added to the anti-British sentiment, the psychological tensions present not only affected the writing of this time, but also the causes of the war itself. During and after the war, the social issues had an impact on the literature. Firstly, the social issues present in the colonies led to works being written in support of separation from the British Empire. People began to develop a revolutionary spirit. Attitudes began to change, and this was evident in pieces such as Thomas Paine's Common Sense, where it paved the way for independence. The causes of the American Revolution were factors that developed into social issues for the colonial people and ultimately influencing the writing by adding a revolutionary spirit. After the war, social issues such as gender and racial inequality came about, which were also factors that would affect literature in the future. When anti-British sentiments and thoughts of independence started arising in the colonies, the culture was beginning to change. The colonies wanted to become their own and started developing their own set of ways aside from the mother country. This change in culture brought in the aspect that there was more reading of colonial literature rather than British literature. Many more colonial people began to read pamphlets, newspapers, and novels in order to understand what was exactly going on in the war. Additionally, many of the literature provided in this era only increased anti-British sentiment and the wanting of independence. There were many political causes to the American Revolution. For example, after the French and Indian War, Britain tightened their control on the colonies. This control led to the Proclamation of 1763, which forbade the colonists to move west, and the Stamp Act of 1765, which taxed printed paper. American newspapers and colonial people reacted to both with anger. Because of increased British control, the colonies were not happy and decided that becoming independent would be the best option. Thomas Paine expressed these views on why becoming independent is common sense in his pivotal piece. The political issues during this time led to the cause of the revolution. Although religion was not a cause of the revolution, it played its role by offering a moral approval for objection to the British Empire. To the colonial people, war was justified in the eyes of God. Preachings began to become a moral sanction for the opposition to the British. People wanted religious freedom, thus increasing approval of independence. The economic issues were one of the various causes to the American Revolution. It added to anti-British sentiment, which would affect the writing of the time. The Stamp Act was an economic factor that provoked the revolution itself. The colonies saw this as one of the last times that they would let the British economically drain them. The Quartering Act also proved to be an economic issue, as the colonists were forced to feed and house British soldiers. These economic factors only increased the wanting of independence. It was one of the various reasons as to why many writings justified the breakaway from the mother country. Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense in 1776, 2 years after he immigrated from England, in which he emphasized that the colonies should break away from the mother country, Great Britain. Paine challenged the authority of British monarch King George II, as well as the British government. It was one of the first works to be published that openly asked for independence from Great Britain. Common Sense was a hugely influential pamphlet, convincing many of the colonists that it was common sense to break away and become an independent nation. Paine described this pamphlet as, quote, nothing more than simple facts, plain arguments, and common sense, end quote. This piece proves to be pivotal as it expressed the concerns of the time and why it was justified to break away. The Declaration of Independence also proved to be a pivotal piece as Jefferson wrote why the colonies were declaring their independence. He emphasized that a body of people has a right to change governments if that government becomes oppressive. It also stated the principles that were the foundation for seeking independence. Not only did it affect the relationship between the colonies and Britain, but it also served as an important factor for other nations wanting independence. It justified the right to revolt against government as it gave them many reasons why the colonies were done with the British Empire. During this time period, colonial style dominated. Writers of this period wrote in the form of novels, newspapers, and pamphlets. Writers wrote about how they viewed and felt about America separating from Britain, as well as their beliefs that they couldn't write about under Britain's control. They focused on American pride and patriotism, especially during times of war. Writing was less religiously based and contained spirit of individualism and self-reliance.